We're living in this cultural era where all of the storytelling is focused on identity. However, nobody cares.
The question now is, do the people writing books, making movies, do they have the knowledge, the experience, the wherewithal to do it right?
In a general sense, none of these identity-focused books or movies break out into mass appeal. There haven't been books that everyone's talking about, aside from like maybe the romantasy books that are so wildly popular.
I like how you talk about them as if you don't own hundreds.
It's why I don't make YouTube videos anymore. It's because I'm just reading romantasy all day. Hey, welcome to The Great Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. I am Kevin Lieber. We're going to talk identity. First, I have a story that's a bit of a tangent, and with me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
This one is more of a mystery than pretty much every episode that we do. We either talk about a thing a lot and it manifests into an episode over time, or at the very least, you know, one of us has an idea and we're like, hey, right before the episode, here's the heads up. This is what it's going to be. I have no idea what this story is. I don't know what this topic is. I asked too. And Kevin's like, oh, you'll find out.
Yeah.
You'll find out. So I wonder if this is like an intervention in some way. If I'm being lured into recording a podcast episode where I'm confronted with some horrible thing about me.
Yeah, it is. I have a letter that I wrote, so I'm going to read from the letter, and it's about all of the ways that you've been disappointing to me and how, you know, unless things change, this is going to have to be the end of the podcast. This is totally one of those episodes where it's like, I've been thinking about things and I'm going to spring them upon you to get your reaction. But the first thing is this story, which is completely out of left field. And the reason that I'm mentioning it, and I need to tell it to you, is because it is, you know the term a perfect storm?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the most perfect storm story I think I've ever heard in my life. Like the number of coincidences and dominoes that had to fall in order for this to occur is astronomical. And that's why it's so interesting to me. And I hope that you find it interesting as well. And I think that you will. So a little bit of a preface here is that we've been watching a lot of The Price is Right on the Roku channel. So the Roku channel has all of these free, like 24 hours a day sort of channels that just repeat shows. So there's a Price is Right channel. There's a Saved by the Bell channel. You could just pick a show and it's constantly showing that show all day.
These are old
night.
episodes. Then.
Yeah.
These are old. They're not current. Like who even does it now? Is it Drew Carey?
Has been
still
doing it for like last 20 years, roughly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're watching Barker era.
Yeah, this is Barker era. And for similar reasons as to why I found Columbo interesting is that it's a bit of a time capsule. You kind of are going back in time to 1972 or 1983, and you're seeing the hairstyles and the clothing and the prizes. So, you know, a prize will be like a brand new answering machine. And you're like, oh, there's like novelty in the fact that, you know, this VCR was like $800 or whatever because it was brand new. I find that interesting. So after watching so many episodes of Price is Right, you eventually start wondering what happened to these people. You know, what's the story behind the announcer Johnny Olson? What happened to Bob Barker? What happened to the models? Because the models in all of these episodes are essentially the same three models. There's Holly, Diane, and Janice. Those three models they were on that show. I think Holly and Diane were on the show for like 18 or 19 years. Janice was on the show for like almost 30 years, which is crazy.
That's a long time. That's like Vanna legacy.
It absolutely is. So, most of the stories are not that interesting. However, Janice, the one who was on the show for 30 years, has this story that's just so unbelievable. And I think almost no one knows this story until now. Okay? Here's the Janice Pennington story.
Janice Pennington.
Janice was married to a mountain climber. This was his hobby. Okay? Her husband was a mountain climber. In the mid-70s, her husband went on a trip overseas, I believe to Afghanistan, on a mountain climbing trip. He never came home, okay?
Okay.
And she found out that he died. So he died on this mountain climbing trip. He, fell off the mountain and he died. It's an obviously dangerous activity, and he died doing it. Now.
All right. So it's confirmed that he died mountain climbing.
Yes, he died mountain climbing.
Okay.
So her husband is dead, which is tragic, obviously, and devastating.
Yeah.
She wasn't there. She spent a long time wondering what happened to him. The whole thing was kind of a mystery, and she went a long time before, getting word that this is what happened. All right. Now, on The Price is Right, there is a game called Cliffhangers. Do you remember this game?
With the little, is that the one with like the little yodeler?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So if anybody hasn't seen this, there's a little like yodeling animatronic man who climbs up a mountain. Each step is representative of a dollar amount of the price of a product that the person has to guess. That the amount that they were off by, the little yodeler climbs up the mountain. If they're off across the span of 3 products by more than $25 total, the yodeler falls off the cliff and they lose the game. This is the game. Okay.
Oh, Janice. Oh, Janice.
I know you know where this is going, but let me just explain all of the things that happened to create this scenario. So The Price is Right is doing really well, and so well that CBS actually orders a primetime version of The Price is Right in the 70s. Now, Bob Barker doesn't host the primetime version, whether he didn't want to double up or whatever the reason. They had to get another guy to host the primetime Price is Right. This guy's name is Dennis James. So Dennis James is hosting this primetime Price is Right. They're doing the cliffhanger game, and Janice is working the cliffhanger game. Now, inexplicably, Dennis James decides to give the man, the little yodeling man, a name. I don't know why. It was just part of what, he was using to make the game more interesting, as part of his hosting duties to liven it up.
Okay.
He names the guy Fritz. So he starts referring to the little yodeling guy as Fritz.
Yeah, that's one of the standard German names. So in World War I, for example, you could talk about what the Germans were doing. So like Fritz is entrenched, over on this river. It was just, you referred to like all of Germany by that common name. So Fritz was just one of those. So I understand why he'd take the little like mountain yodeler in the lederhosen in the cap. I remember the little guy going up the mountain, right? and I can see, especially then, you could stereotype and not get heat for it. Be like, oh, this is Fritz.
Yeah. So now,
by the way, my cousin had a giant Belgian horse named Fritz.
Okay.
Yeah, it was big. Nice horse.
So not only, with your explanation, which perfectly makes sense, that this was like calling an American Michael or something. Not only that, Fritz was basically the most famous mountain climber. There's a guy named Fritz Weissner who invented free climbing. So like in the annals of mountain climbing, apparently, I don't know too much about the mountain climbing lore, but Fritz Weissner, I think, is like the Michael Jordan of mountain climbing. So it
looks that way. I just popped his Wikipedia into the chat. Yeah.
So that's why
climbed the Austrian Alps before World War I. Yeah, he's an OG.
This is the guy. This is Air Jordan of mountain climbing is Fritz Weissner, and supposedly this is why it made sense to Dennis James to name this guy Fritz, like you would be calling him LeBron if it was a basketball player. Like, oh, here goes LeBron.
This checks a lot of boxes.
Okay.
This is good.
All right. So they're playing the game. He names the little mountain climber Fritz. The contestant loses the game. Fritz falls off the mountain, to his death.
Yeah.
And Dennis James goes, "There goes Fritz," as he's falling off the thing. Okay. "There goes Fritz." It's what he says as the little man falls off the mountain. Okay. Janice's husband was named Fritz.
Oh, no.
Her husband that died falling off a mountain was named Fritz.
Oh, no.
And she's standing there as this guy's naming this guy inexplicably. Well, naming him inexplicably because Bob Barker never named the guy. I've watched 700 episodes and he never referred to this man as anything. This guy refers to him as something. The most famous mountain climber. His name's Fritz. Her husband, who had just died falling off a mountain, was named Fritz. So
did you watch this episode? Have you seen?
I can't find it. No, I'm sure they
face
scrubbed
must have
it.
been
She ran
sullen.
off the stage, hysterical, crying. Okay.
Yeah.
And then refused to come out for the rest of the show because she's just a mess of a puddle of a human being over all of this. Okay. Then for the rest of her 24 years on the show, never worked on the mountain climber, the cliffhanger game ever again. Never did that game. She would not come out for that game. Okay. It was over at that point. So I was really trying, I should have written it down because I had a good sense of it in my head, but I would really like to try to bullet point all of the dominoes that had to line up for this to happen. Okay. One is that that her husband fell off a mountain. The next is that she worked on a game show where a person falls off a mountain, which is really freaking weird. Okay.
That's pretty strange. Yeah.
That's really weird. Then it's really important that they expanded the show to a primetime episode in which a new host was there who was unfamiliar with Janice and her story. Because Bob Barker knew about her husband and knew about Fritz and never in a million years would ever make this mistake. It could only happen with an interim host who had no idea about her or her background. So then she's working on the interim host episode. They play this game. She's working on the game. Okay. And then it's also important not only to recognize that the guy has the same name as the most famous mountain climber of all time, Fritz, which seems kind of obscure to me, at least, that they would be named Fritz. I've never met a Fritz in my entire life. And then the kind of the last thing here is that the contestant lost. If they had won the game, this never happens because Fritz doesn't fall off the mountain.
Yeah, the universe conspired to just jam this dude's foot in his mouth. It's unfortunate for everybody because, obviously Janice is a victim of circumstance here, but there's no expectation that Dennis James would know.
No.
Like nobody in the whole process, you'd have to know all these details in advance to know that Janice is being put in a bad spot. Like everything is bad here. But I suppose if you do a show long enough, you're going to do something awful. I bet we've accidentally done terrible things.
Yeah, I'm sure.
At least it was an accident for me. I'm sure you've done them on purpose.
Yeah,
but I'm sure I've done it accidentally.
Yeah, yeah. So the sort of the epilogue here is that rumor has it that guy was eventually fired, or like not renewed or whatever over this kerfuffle. Never brought back. And the major plot twist, is that Fritz died in a top secret CIA sting or something. Like he wasn't just...
Her Fritz did.
Her Fritz did not just go mountain climbing. This was not like a little R&R where he went to Afghanistan to mountain climb and accidentally fell off a mountain. He was murdered during like an espionage event.
So the whole upsetting story was just a fake explanation anyway.
It was a cover story.
Wow.
Yeah. And she didn't know about any of this. he was actually like a spy or something.
Let's further twist it. Let's further twist this. If anybody's seen Rocky 3, there's a charity thing with Thunder Lips. Thunder Lips is the late great Hulk Hogan. Rocky Balboa is wrestling Thunder Lips for charity, and one of the wrestling commentators on the Thunder Lips match is Dennis James.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So he got a little bit of work after the incident. You know, it
nice.
took like 10 years,
yeah,
but
nice. A cameo.
I don't even think he had a name. You know, it wasn't like he wasn't playing himself in that. Nobody knew who he was at that point. He was just, you know, like wrestling commentator, the end.
Yeah. I did read that he obviously felt horrible about the whole situation, God. You know, apologized to her profusely. But man, like the last bullet point that I forgot to mention that I had thought about is all of this happened on primetime television. So it's not like this was like a little awkward thing during like a local, you know, show or whatever that just the audience members were involved in. No, this was something that likely millions of people saw. So
were they live? Were those shows live?
No, I don't think it was live, but I imagine it aired.
Yeah, must have. I also didn't know I looked to see what year that started because I thought it started in the 70s. Apparently, it started in 1956. Did you know this? That it ran for
the first run
10
of it.
years. Yeah, I did not know that. I thought it was only, you know, the one that I was familiar with in color. I had no idea that now it's like a 70-year-old show.
Yeah, so when Barker brought it back in 72, it was called The New Price is Right for a while. And he refers to it as The New Price is Right. And it was actually only half an hour. It was very different. And then it got super popular. They expanded it to a full hour and then added the wheel and all that crap.
Well, that was the staple of sick days in our era, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
You'd watch The Price is Right and like Jerry Springer.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of all that was interesting on TV at 10 a.m. on a weekday when you were a kid.
Yeah. While your mom watched the soaps or shows.
Yeah. My mom watched one soap, and I think it was The Days of Our Lives when I was so young that I still had a nap, because I remember the theme song coming on, and that was like nap time for me. So I must have been like 4.
Yeah, every mom had one show. They didn't like the other ones, but they're like, yeah, this one's okay. And meanwhile, they're like hopelessly addicted to it. Days of Our Lives, As the World Turns, General Hospital, all that stuff. All right, that was my story time. Here's the real topic, which is, a bit more serious. Well, I guess that story is pretty serious for Janice Pennington.
Yeah, what's more serious than a man falling to his death as a cover for a CIA op gone bad?
Yeah, it's about as high stakes as it gets, as dramatic as it gets. There's a thing that I had been thinking about for a while now, and there are a couple of dots that I connected that I thought was interesting and worth sharing with you. And we've been talking a lot about the state of storytelling. And, I've read, there have been articles written recently that I have read about particularly like men not being interested in reading anymore, and sort of the publishing industry shying away from appealing to male readers, stuff like that. And also, what's going on with the Academy Awards and like the types of movies that they're nominating for Best Picture, the types of ones that are winning. Well, one of the articles that I read, it was either the New Yorker or New York Times about this topic, specifically mentioned the idea that what publishers are interested in are stories about identity. Okay, this is what they're looking for. They're looking for stories about identity. And if you have followed the Academy Awards and you understand the movies that are winning and are nominated for Best Picture, they are also based on identity.
Yes.
Like
and a lot of shows, a lot of Netflixy like series are identity based. Everything is identity. Yeah.
So we're living in this cultural era where basically all of the storytelling is focused on identity. However, all of it's really boring and nobody cares. Okay. This is sort of the paradox that I have developed. This is Kevin Lieber's identity paradox, because I think that we're at a time where everyone is obsessed with identity. However, no one is interested in anyone else's identity. And I mean that at like a mass level, not in like, specific pockets, but in a general sense. None of these identity focused books or movies ever break out into like cultural acceptance or mass appeal. None of them.
The first question I have, that's a clarification type thing, is what does identity mean in a story? Like when you say this is an identity story, what does that entail?
Well, it seems like they look for are, specific identities that they would consider come from within a marginalized group that in the past has gone unnoticed. So they're looking for stories about the identities of people whose stories haven't been told before. I think that's kind of like the general sort of idea behind searching out these stories and amplifying them. So let's identify some particular type of person and tell their story because they've been, historically ignored. There are a lot, and in my opinion, and I think that this has been borne out through like the lack of success at a mass level. General audiences just are bored by this. Like they're not interested. And because, when the Academy Award nominations come out, I would think 9 out of 10 people haven't even heard of half of these movies. Like literally haven't even heard of them, let alone have watched them and have an opinion on them.
Yeah, that hit me for the first time a lot of years ago. I remember distinctly when it hit. I was at an Oscar party in Hollywood, and this tells you how long ago this was. And it was the year that Crash won. I can't recall the year, but let's say it was 2007 or 8 or something like that.
Before that,
so a long time ago. I remember looking at the list, and I'd only heard of like 2 of the movies. I simply had never heard of them, and I wasn't avoiding movies or culture at that time. I wasn't spending time anywhere else, so like that year I'd been in the United States. Like there's every reason that I should have at least known the names of all the movies on that list. And I was like, I don't know what's going on here. I literally do not know how this decision is going to be made or what each of these movies entails. I knew of Crash, and that was it, and then it won. But it's not like I watched it. And I thought, okay, this feels different than when I was a kid. And it's like, who's going to win out of these 5 very popular movies, or 4 plus 1 that has like artistic appeal that didn't have mass market appeal? There's always that like wild card in the mix. And then it started to shift to these are not things that like broadly people like.
Well, yeah.
And now it's just hopeless.
Yeah, and now it's just completely hopeless. Yeah. So I did want to make that distinction that, there was a time when the Best Picture nominees were essentially movies that everyone had seen. It would be like Forrest Gump. Everyone watched Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction. That was a huge movie. Whatever. Shawshank Redemption. I don't know. Like these were movies that everybody had seen. And now it's maybe one movie that a lot of people saw, and then a whole bunch of stuff that no one's ever even heard of.
Yep.
And I had heard a thing recently about like the most famous movie quotes of all time. If you look up any list of like the top 50 most famous movie quotes of all time, there's literally nothing after like 2008.
Oh, I'm trying to think if I can like throw a one-liner out from a movie in the last 10 or 15 years, and I'm not sure that I can. Is there a catchphrase in one of the Marvel movies that is really, somebody's got to know this in the episode chat. Somebody's got to have something here that we're missing. But go back 20 years before that, and there were like 5 lines just from like each Jim Carrey movie. There was some level of that, like, we're going to need a bigger boat line from Jaws that was in every popular movie. You just referenced it all the time and everybody knew what you were talking about. The closest thing is like memes from like Tiger King now, where there's a meme that's like, I'm never going to financially recover from this.
Oh, yeah. Right. Right.
You get the odd thing like that. But I can't come up with it on the movie side. Not anymore.
Yeah. So there are more just general thoughts I have about the idea of like identity-based storytelling. One is that maybe this is reductive, but there's a sense that I have that making a story about one particular person's identity is as boring as trying to tell somebody a dream that you had. Like maybe,
yeah. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. It's like, I don't care about your dream. Like that is, and that's like everyone understands that. Like that's a well-known thing that like no one wants to listen to someone tell them about a dream that they had. It's like understood to be boring.
If it goes beyond 2 sentences, that's too much. and it's just like the only reaction is like, oh, that's weird, or oh, that's scary.
That's it.
If you're like, if I said I had a dream last night that Donald Trump peed on my kitten's head, you'd be like, what is going on in your mind?
Yeah.
But if you'd elaborated past that tagline, it's too much.
You just stop
That's
listening.
How much people hate this. Yeah. Oh, and he was wearing a pinstripe suit, and my cat was like, you'd think that a cat would get wet and run away, but my cat just like stood there and just like got peed on. Shut up.
Stop talking.
Yeah. You were done after the first sentence. And even that sentence, you're like, that's weird. Dreams are pretty weird. They don't make sense most of the time. That's it.
So the other thing that I was thinking about, because I'm like, why is it so boring to, read a story or watch a story about just someone's like particular identity? And then I realized, for one, that that's actually the domain of documentary. Like this is what documentaries do. So documentaries, they dive into one person, their identity, their life, their hopes, their dreams, their failures, their triumphs. That's what a documentary is.
Yes.
It's not a blockbuster movie. It's really like a niche thing that is largely for the audience of that person. And sometimes other people will filter in if it's a really good documentary. But for the most part, it's like you make a documentary about Elvis and Elvis fans are super into it. But only some fringe people will come in afterwards around that and say, oh, this is a good documentary. I didn't know that about Elvis, and now I'm more interested in Elvis. Does that make sense?
It does. And it seems like there are 2 ways to play identity. And one is that the identity has to be so fascinating and interesting that it's worth delving into. This is so incredibly rare. An example of this is The Devil and Daniel Johnston.
Mm-hmm.
This was a documentary. Now, if anybody doesn't know Daniel Johnston, I don't even know how you describe him and his music. He was one of the weirdest people to live in our lifetime.
Yes.
He was a super weird guy. We would, if the Create Unknown had existed, 25 years ago, he would have been an incredible guest. When he first started out, he wrote this album of really weird songs. He recorded it on like a handheld cassette player, and he gave that away. Now, anybody else would dub the tape. They would get a second one and make copies. He recorded the whole album on each and every tape performing it into the cassette player and then giving away the result. So none of the copies were the same because he was recording each one fresh. That's weird. That's strange as hell. And he was completely underground until Kurt Cobain wore a t-shirt with one of his designs on it. And people just started asking who he was. He blew up from there. Anyway, that's a super unique identity story. There are not very many Daniel Johnstons who have ever existed in the world. The second way to play it is somebody's identity in a context that is interesting. All right. Now, we were talking about movies, so I'll use an example from movies rather than documentaries. If anybody knows the film The Green Book, this is like 7 or 8 years old. This movie could have been really terrible. Now, I don't think that it's the best movie in the world. It's good. It's not epic. You'll survive if you don't ever watch the Green Book. But the premise of this is that it's in the 60s in the U.S. and a pianist is going on a concert tour through the South. The pianist is black. The driver is Viggo Mortensen, so he's white. And they have this thing called the Green Book, which is a directory, basically, of all the friendly places that will not discriminate against black travelers. Hotels you can stay at, restaurants you can eat at, whatever. So obviously, this film leans really heavily on the identity of being a black man in the 1960s South in America.
Yeah.
This is an identity film. It's contrasted amazingly with Viggo Mortensen's identity. He's got his own identity and struggles with this. And it's a bit of an odd couple, these two guys going on a 2-month tour where they're constantly in the same car, in the same places. So you all of a sudden have context that each identity can play off, right? But the identity and everything good and bad about it is revealed through the interactions with the culture that they're going through. So it is that identity in a context. And it's a good movie, right? Where people make mistakes, they get surprised, they do some great things, they get in trouble, they get out of trouble, just all these things that can come up with this collection of identities. Okay, that's how you tell an identity story. It is not enough to say, here's a guy who is a talented artist going through the South who happens to be a black man, and Jim Crow South is a terrible place for him. That's not wrong, but it wouldn't be a banger. It wouldn't be a banger at all. The funny thing is it's very much, Kevin, like your Vsauce 2 videos, in that almost none of the topics you've ever done are inherently interesting. They're not. Like a math paradox. Okay, that's quirky. A tiny segment of the population takes some joy in the little puzzles of math or the quirks of something scientific. Yeah, generally though, that stinks. It's lame. Your videos are good because here's a thing in the world that's in that case unexpected or weird, and it's actually interesting because of what we do with it or the role it plays in this thing or that thing. A good example of this is the optimal stopping video that do you remember the name of this? Because I can't remember.
No.
With the Post-it notes and Euler's number.
The Game You Quit, maybe something like that. I remember the video. I don't remember the title. I think it's The Game You Quit.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting concept, that there's a mathematical way to figure out how long you would play a game before quitting with reasonable confidence that you've achieved the best possible result. But the real interesting thing is this is how you find a husband or wife. That's an optimal stopping game in real life. You meet people, you date people. At a certain point, you decide to stop that because you've picked a winner.
Yeah. Or a parking spot or buy a house or kind of anything.
A parking spot, hiring anybody. You can only interview so many people before you have to commit, right? So this academic concept, this mathematical concept, is only interesting when it's placed in the context of real life. Well, the Green Book did this very well, very well. And it could have been a schlocky and boring identity story. Instead, it was just plain a good story that revealed everything that somebody focused on identity would want it to accomplish.
Right.
This is the hard work, and I don't think that enough people trust in this process, trust that it can come out rather than being like on the main stage with the spotlight on it the whole time. I don't think they know how to do it. And I don't think they want to. I think they're so concerned about awareness of whatever particular identity that they just brute force it. They brute force it.
Yeah. And I know that because I did want to say, it's not like doing an identity story can't work. It's not inherently flawed idea. It's just that so many of them don't. I'm glad. So we're in the Discord, and the bear mentioned Sinners. And I was racking my brain to think of, like, is there an identity story that actually did well at the box office? And that is one of them. So thank you for mentioning one, because I wanted, I would have been remiss if we went through this whole podcast and I couldn't think of a single one that did well, but that one did do well, and it can be done, but it seems really rare. It seems really rare. And that there's a reason. I think it's inarguable that there haven't been books that everyone's talking about, that everyone's reading in really a long time, aside from like maybe some of the romantasy books that are so wildly popular with women, particularly. That
I like how you talk about them as if you don't own hundreds.
Well, it's why I don't make YouTube videos anymore. It's because I'm just reading romantasy all day. I'll find out what's going on with the elves and the minotaurs. But I wouldn't categorize that even as mass appeal, because it only, appeals to a large segment of half of the population. It's not something like Harry Potter or the Hunger Games that hits both sides. It doesn't hit everyone for different reasons, and it has that level of appeal. There has been nothing like that in over a decade.
No, and think about Harry Potter is actually a really good example here because you can look at that two ways. One is that it is a weird identity story. This is, who is Harry Potter and why is he N equals 1? Some people have similar attributes, whatever. The rest of Hogwarts does. There's a whole community of people who are kind of like him, but nobody is him. If you the bear says J.K. Rowling's identity understanding is as deep as my toilet bowl. It's not obviously a pure identity story, but the point is that who is Harry Potter and why does it matter is revealed over 7 books. Is it 6 or 7?
7, I think.
And it's revealed by him encountering things that ratchet up in intensity and navigating relationships with other people, whether it's his friends or Dumbledore or Snape or any of this. At no point is there just like Harry Potter like being exposed as the chosen one and here's what all that entails. No, he gets an inkling of this and he has no idea what it means. It's a quest to figure out what his identity is and then how it fits in the context of the world. Mostly through qualities, which this is where I'm going here. The best identity things are the ones that focus on the qualities people have, because qualities are much more transferable. Okay. You can be in a Harry Potter position where you have to fight for something. You have to decide how much you yourself are going to give to the cause, whether it's a big cause that's way bigger than you, or whether it is an individual family fight. Like, who knows, right? But you have to figure out what you're going to do, how much of it, and why. All right. That's totally transferable. I am never going to be a black pianist being toured around the American South in 1962. That's unlikely to happen in my lifetime. So I'm obviously very far removed from this particular identity. But there are elements to it and qualities of both of these people in the Green Book story, where you're in situations that, while not totally similar, test the same parts of identity, right? The things that make up the identity, somebody's resolve, somebody's willingness to turn the other cheek. At what point do you not turn the other cheek? At what point do you make somebody else decide whether they have to turn the other cheek? These things come up in everybody's life, right? So the really good identity stories play on the transferable qualities that, like, we either have or we wish we had, or we feel bad that we don't have. Sometimes, you feel good because you recognize in a character something that you possess, and you're like, oh, this is a good moral character. This is the goofiest, dumbest example. I was watching a Jason Statham movie. Okay. And this is like the definition of modern B movie. Every Jason Statham movie is exactly the same, aside from the Expendables, or the Fast and Furious stuff that he did. He's always a guy who beats people up for a purpose. And there is a scene where he stages a fight with a guy who's trying to impress a girl. And it's so weird because the guy is Vinny from either Growing Pains or Doogie Howser. Vinny Delfino, was that Doogie Howser?
I think that was Doogie Howser, yeah.
Yeah. So it's him, obviously as an adult, who's trying to impress Sofia Vergara. You don't need to know anything about these characters to know that this is a mismatch, that he's trying to punch above his weight big time. So he stages a fight with Jason Statham. He beats up Jason Statham. Sofia Vergara is impressed. And later on, Vinny Delfino comes around to pay Jason Statham for the staging. And he gives him $1,000. But they only agreed on $500. But the guy's so happy. Sophia loves him, says that she's in love with him now. And he's like, yeah, I told you I'd give you 500 more if she said she was in love with me. And he refuses to take it. He takes it initially and then hands 500 of it back. And is like, I'll just take the 500 we agreed to. This is a dumb movie. It's a bad movie. It's a stupid scene. That's a comedic throwaway scene. This is like direct to video level movie. And that's still a transferable element in culture. That, do you take that money or do you not? Well, what's it say about the character when he gives it back? That's why it's amazing, because this happens in the very beginning of the movie. You actually are lured into thinking this movie is really good because Sofia Vergara is in it and Jason Alexander is in it, all in the first 5 minutes, and then they disappear. They're not elements of the story, and it goes to minimum wage zilches doing a Jason Statham movie.
Yeah. They could only afford them for one day on set.
Yeah. But that actually sets the tone for who that character is, Jason Statham's character, his refusal of that money. And so it's putting a spotlight on an element of his identity in a way that is subtle. Okay. You can do this in the dumbest movie ever. If you can do it in the dumbest movie ever, why can't you do it in a really good story with really good characters that are deep? They're not Jason Statham always being a former special forces soldier who now is like a construction worker who has to save a kidnapped girl, right? Which is I just described a real movie. I think it's called The Workman. Yeah, I've seen all of his films. I love them. But why wouldn't you do that if you had the opportunity? Why wouldn't you make the most of the characters you've got, the identities that you've got in the context, rather than just showing the two things on the surface and saying, oh yeah, isn't that screwed up? Or isn't that hard? and then somebody triumphs or whatever it is. It's boring. That's lame. It's lazy, but it's actually difficult to do it right. The question now is, do the people writing books, making movies, do they have the knowledge, the experience, the wherewithal to do it right? And I think increasingly the answer is no.
Yeah, I think we've learned that the answer is no for the reasons that I stated earlier. And that's, I don't know when and how we're going to get out of it, but it isn't going well. I think that we could, I think the people financing these flops and financing these books that nobody buys and no one talks about would agree that it's not really going well. I think that something like, I want to make a distinction between an identity story and a metaphysical story, because and this is where things get confusing and why it's a topic that's kind of hard to talk about, because for all of the reasons that you stated, you could say, yes, like Harry Potter is an identity story because it's about Harry Potter and his identity. But Harry Potter is a metaphysical story for the other reasons that you stated, in which there are, forces at play, good and evil, right and wrong, morally just and unjust characters, that examine basically the human condition at a metaphysical level, that allow, and the characters within those, that stage within that play have the different qualities. Hermione Granger has particular qualities about her studiousness and, her steadfastness when it comes to learning and all of that stuff that people could, relate to. Ron Weasley struggles with, being kind of a hero, but kind of a coward. Is he going to wilt under the pressure? Is he not? He's going to rise to the occasion, like that sort of thing. These are
the trials and tribulations of the Anglo ginger. That is the Ron Weasley story.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what I think that's what I truly believe that these stories that are focused on identity are missing. They're looking at, it's like you go to the Grand Canyon and you're trying to look at it through a microscope and you're like, look, isn't this, little amoeba on this slide through this microscope super interesting? And it's like, maybe for a few seconds, but if I don't look at the microscope, I could look at the Grand Canyon, which is like a lot more interesting to a lot more people.
Yes. The identities, it goes back to the dreams thing. Dreams are interesting in your own head when you wake up and you think about what they were. Identities, and especially your own identity, is primarily interesting only in your own head or to a handful of people close to you. Nobody and nothing is really interesting until it interacts with the rest of the world, or doesn't, right? They have the opportunity and they don't take it. That's interesting. They make, every opportunity. Or I mentioned Rocky in the Thunder Lips scene. But those movies are sort of like a, what do we do now, with this person's identity? The first one is failed guy who gets a shot not to be a failure. What does he do with that opportunity? And it goes a certain way at the end. And how much does that matter when it's not what he expected or hoped for, really? They follow that up with, okay, now what happens with real success? The third one, the premise is too much success and the excess and really getting lazy, being too comfortable with the success. And he's knocked down a few pegs. Then the fourth one is his success as it relates to like the entire, global ecosystem, which I'm not saying these are strong plots, but you can see it's the identity interacting with a different thing in each of these movies. In Rocky V, which nobody watches anymore, this is the one with Tommy Morrison.
Horrible.
R.I.P. It's not a great movie. But then it is, here's the identity we've had 4 movies of, but now he's a mentor. The really interesting thing is that was a total failure. And then they went back and did it right. Did the Rocky as mentor the right way. They did it in a really engaging way that people liked, not only in elements of Rocky Balboa, but also in the Creed spinoff. So this all can be executed really well or really poorly. But in every single one of these, it's the identity that encounters a different thing. Marvel films had new encounters that led all the way up to Endgame. And I think it was very difficult to have a collection of different identities interact with something sufficiently interesting after Endgame. I don't know what you really do after that. And so they hyper focused on, character paths, and kind of lost track of like, here's them clashing against the world in a meaningful way. Instead, it was just like busting through the world and occasionally stopping to think about what it was. The threat from whatever entity you're against, whether it's a social norm or an actual villain. There's only so much that's interesting about that. The early Superman movies, I don't know enough about the modern ones, but they were really black and white clear on what the conflict was, and then super nuanced as a a non-man navigating life, pretending to be a human man, while actually having another identity and figuring out a moral code that satisfied both him and both of his identities. This is wildly interesting when you actually put that into a world as mundane as, and he's a reporter for the local paper. That forces him to interact with all of these people. It's harder to do that with like Thor, right? Thor is not like a gas station attendant on the interstate. No. I think that there's this feeling that you can't, it's going to be mundane and boring if you do run-of-the-mill clashing against the world stories. And I think it's the opposite. I think it's counterintuitive, where what's boring is the fantastic, crazy stuff. That's only interesting when you have like sufficient twists or interesting enough action sequences or effects. Really. Green Book, did that win, by the way? Did that win the Best Picture?
It might have. It certainly was nominated. I think it might have won.
It did win. And let me break this down into one line. And if you can't break it down into one line and have somebody understand, like, oh yeah, there's got to be a story in that, then it's a shitty concept. It's a shitty concept. So I'm looking at the nominees that year. A Star is Born is a great concept. Seasoned entertainment vet discovers new talent. They navigate a very rocky existence with the man struggling with depression and alcoholism and this and that. All right, yeah, there's got to be a story in there. Black Panther, which was wildly successful. This is a superhero tied to a specific society that has its own like separation from the world that then has to integrate in some way with the world. It's very much like Wakanda is very much like an Amish community in that sense, where it's like we have our own self-contained thing with its own rules, and we do have to engage to some degree with the world. How do you do that? Okay, there's a story. One line. Green Book, black man and white man in a car driving through the South for 2 months, figuring out really how they fit within the world and how to navigate their own lives. One line, clear as day. Bohemian Rhapsody, nominated that same year. Freddie Mercury's story is weird as hell, right? Immigrant with serious talent that he grinds out in a really unwise way. Nobody would advise that somebody do it the way Freddie Mercury did it. And then he blows up and deals with, the life that brings, and his individual qualities along the way. This is one of those stories where somebody's sexuality is actually an interesting element of who they are. You want to know about how Freddie Mercury is navigating the world with his unique combination of sexuality. They do a good job of that. So anyway, these are one line. I don't know Vice. I don't know Roma. I don't know The Favorite. And I didn't see Black Klansman. So I can't say anything about those. But the ones that I know made this list. You can cleanly describe them in one line. It's obvious that there's more to this story. And yeah, I'd entertain the possibility of hearing a bit more. Ford versus Ferrari is the following year. And that's so interesting because just from the title, you know that there's a clash between two ways of doing things. You don't have to care about racing. You don't have to know anything. But obviously Ford is doing one thing. Ferrari is trying to succeed in the same business, doing it differently. What's happening? Would Ford be a good documentary? Yes. Would Ferrari be a good documentary? Yes. But these two essentially corporate identities are both super interesting because they're clashing in the world. My blood pressure's high. It's very high.
Yeah. That's what makes the movie, though, because I was also trying to think of like identity documentaries that I really like that do not appeal to a lot of people, and one of them is Brothers Keeper, which I know that you've seen.
The documentary?
Yes. Like Brothers Keeper is was a documentary that is about very particular people and their identities. And that's it.
Yes.
That's it. It's not a Ford versus Ferrari. It's not a movie. It's not a fictional movie. It's an examination of these people's identity. And
as they clash with modernity. So like that. The one line here is that there are four elderly brothers on a rundown farm that one of them winds up dead. And the question is, did he die in his sleep, or did one or all of his brothers murder him? Because they all sleep in the same bedroom. They actually only have two beds, and two brothers sleep in each of the two beds, despite them all being in their 60s and 70s. So this gives you a sense of what these guys are like. But the one guy's put on trial for murdering his brother, and it like the prosecutor is from a nearby city. The county DA is approaching this case in a certain way, not understanding the simplicity that these guys live with and what their life is really like. That's a really good example, Kevin. That's good that they show this way of life, which is interesting on its own. These guys are characters. Would you agree?
Oh, there sure are characters. But the point that I'm trying to make is like, that is an identity film. It's super interesting. I was completely compelled and engrossed within it. It has this conflict that you're talking about that should allow it to be, more widely interesting. And it was one of the most successful documentaries in 1992 when it came out, and it made $1.3 million, which is nothing. That's no money. So even when you have like an excellent identity story, like 5 people care. This is the point I'm trying to illustrate. It's like hard. Like I'm trying to create the distinction between mass appeal of something and identity stories. And even when you have a great one like Brothers Keeper, 99.9% of people have never even heard of it. It's not Jurassic Park, okay? Which probably was like the same year or around the same year. Maybe it was the year before, something like that. You have Jurassic Park, which makes $1 trillion billion. And then you have Brothers Keeper, which like 7 people are like, wow, have you ever heard of this? And it's fantastic.
I've never met somebody outside of my brother and his college friend, because all this was happening right after they were, I'm trying to think of the way it lined up. It either happened when they were in college, 15 minutes from the place, 20 minutes from the place, or it had just happened when they went to college. Other than them, like my mom remembered it because it was, she followed like crime stuff. She was really into books like that. And it was a weird story. But outside of that, I've never met somebody who knew of this.
No.
Never. Yeah. I actually haven't thought of it that way. Not once have I encountered a person who is familiar with this film. And it's my favorite. It's my favorite. It's the most influential piece of media I've ever seen. Influential on me. Just 1,000 reasons. I could do a full episode on why. But it's that good. It's that important. And yeah, it would have to be somebody who's like in the documentary industry. They would surely know of it.
Yeah, because it's niche. It's the microscope. It's the microscope that I'm talking about. It's like the identity stuff for the most part is interesting to the people who want to look through that microscope. It's interesting to you because there are things about those people that you understand and you relate to.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that's why it's interesting to you. And that's what happens with these stories. It's like it's interesting to the people who understand and relate to that specific slide under the microscope, and everyone else gives a jaw-cracking yawn.
They do.
Jaw-cracking yawn.
Yep. Yeah, they do. And the limitations. So this is a good example is that I've had some people watch that documentary, and the reception has been like, oh, that was really good. But they're not seriously moved by it in a way that I am. You have to appreciate those details. You have to know those details because in that documentary format, they can't talk about them. The filmmakers, if they're doing this responsibly, they can't tip the scales that way. They shouldn't be leaning on some of those parts. They need to throw them out there, show you, and let you do it, and you figure it out. Well, so if you don't know what you're looking for, you miss a lot of these things. I see that film, and I know every one of these people, like the way they dress, how they look. There's a point where a guy, one of the guys pulls back a sheet of plywood that's for some reason serving as a door to a barn, but it's not on a hinge.
That's the part I remember. That's the one part I'll never forget about the documentary is that plank.
Yeah. And it's like, why don't you just have literally anything else serving as the door here?
Literally
he's
anything
got to squeeze
else. Yeah.
Like a tarp would be better. Hinges would be better.
Yeah.
He squeezes like he's like a
solution.
Cat or something.
Oh, yeah. It looks painful to get behind. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful. And I watched that and I remember, I just remember a piece of plywood being on a door on one of the sheds here at my place when I was a kid. It was chipboard instead of plywood. But yeah, I see all of it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I get these people and the way they live. But the filmmakers did the right thing by simply showing it and leaving it at that.
Yeah.
That's why I love that film. Well, if it's a John Grisham movie, which this would be a fantastic John Grisham style novel where the main character is the lawyer for this guy.
Yeah.
And he's running up against, like a conspiracy in the county DA office that's tied to, like land use on the brother's farm or something. It would be incredible. Well, there you can take liberties and be explicit about what a reader or a viewer should focus on. Documentary, you got to throw it out there like a buffet and hope that not only do people spoon some on their plate, but when they eat it, they actually like it. You got to trust that process. And most of the time it doesn't work. Yeah. Anyway.
And there are a couple of like documentaries that have popped super hard in the last, 6 years or so. One you mentioned before, which is Tiger King, which fits into that example of just someone so truly, utterly otherworldly levels of bizarre that it's, car wreck territory and everyone has to see it. Right. That's so rare that, that's why there's not a new Tiger King-esque documentary that comes out every year that enraptures everyone. It just doesn't happen. It's lightning in a bottle.
Ren Fair one on HBO. I didn't even like that. I didn't even finish the first episode of the Ren Fair guy. And he is objectively super, super weird.
Yeah, you're right.
That is one of those stories. And I should have been primed to chain watch that, and I wasn't into it at all.
Nobody was. No one talked about the Ren Fair thing. I think I watched all of it, and I don't even really remember much of it because, yeah, it wasn't even in that example of someone being really weird, creating their own little world, kind of similar to tiger skiing, but at a much larger scale. It still wasn't captivating. The other one I wanted to mention was Making a Murderer, which had a similar kind of cultural explosion. And I think for one of the reasons, at least, was because I think a lot of people already came into that with an instilled distrust of the legal system, of police, of the courts, and all of that stuff. So you come into that already having this sense that this system is corrupt, and then now here's an identity story, essentially, of one guy's massive fight against all of that. And then there's the mystery involved of did he or didn't he? And, kind of that's an open-ended question that people don't really have the answer to. So that I think is why that worked. But for the most part, this was sort of the revelation that I wanted to share that I hadn't heard anybody talk about before, is that I do think that, 10 years or so into this obsession with identity, at a cultural level where we all agree that it's fascinating and interesting and really important, at the same time, it seems like no one actually cares. So that's the paradox. This is my identity paradox, is that we are trapped in this bizarre enclosure of everyone thinking identity is the most interesting and important thing, when at the same time being utterly and dispassionately bored and disinterested by it. Like, what do you do with that? It's truly bizarre.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't be that way. It doesn't really make logical sense. That's why I'm calling it a paradox, because it's counterintuitive. How could they both be true? How could it be the most fascinating thing about everyone and just completely yawn-worthy at the same exact time?
That's true. Yeah. It is really it's going to be a 1 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. There's not a lot of middle ground with these. The identity things are either so stupid and boring, or they're awesome. And you not only do you remember them, but they're fascinating individual pieces that never leave your mind. Things like you can recall in your mind right now that scene of an old man peeling back a sheet of plywood and wedging himself into a bar.
Yes. Yeah, and I saw that 25 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah, I was going to say, you must have seen it like at least 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Most things are forgettable. Most of the things are forgettable, and they're forgettable about you. They're forgettable about me. Almost all the elements of every individual are pretty forgettable. The question is, what do you seize on and how do you present it so that it not only is not forgettable, but it actually intrigues people.
And is relatable. I think maybe relating is the issue. Is that like the foundational issue of why this is in conflict, is that once you look through that microscope, if you don't find anything relatable, you're out. Even if the thing under there is really interesting in its own right, unless you can connect in some manner, then you can find something else that will connect with you.
Think about meeting somebody in person. You're talking to them. This is very hard because, we don't talk to anybody in the world. We don't leave the house. We never have. We are incels. Everybody listening to this is a shut-in and incel just like us. Let's do a thought experiment that you leave the house one time. And and the sun doesn't instantly burn your skin to a crisp. But there's any social sort of thing where you meet somebody for the first time. How stupid would it be to lead with, I'm actually a really courageous person. Actually, I'm gay. Oh, by the way, I don't wear shorts. I only wear long pants. I only wear shorts to bed. That's why I use that example. I don't wear shorts like in the wild anymore. I did when I was a kid, but now it's just pants all the time. Okay. But like nobody would care about any of these things unless it hit them right in the bullseye, where it's like, oh, I'm also gay. Oh, I also have a severe allergy to shorts after the age of 40. Like any element of identity, whether it's a foundational thing or a frivolous thing, you need it to match interesting. You need it to match perfectly. If you say, oh, I'm a courageous person, nobody believes you. Nobody cares. It's actually not offensive. It's off-putting. It's off-putting, right? To lead with any of these things. It really hits people when you know them for a while, you see them in a situation that they navigate really well. And you'd say, well, that person stepped up to the plate, or that person is courageous, or, here's the difficult situation that, a person is facing because this element of their life, whether it's a characteristic they were born with or a choice they've made. Anything in between that they're sticking to so strongly that it's affecting their life. That's how it gets interesting and why people care about you.
Right. Because otherwise, if you just say like, hi, I hate broccoli, or any of the things that you mentioned, the only kind of response you can give back is, okay.
Yeah.
What do you do with that information? Yeah.
No. So I'm in such a habit of not only wearing pants, but wearing a certain kind of pants, because I blast them with
diarrhea,
sawdust. I'm talking about the front of my pants. I wear them when I'm doing any outdoor work, whatever. There's no sense in wearing something other than like Dickies or Carhartt work pants, right? So that's just what I have. That's what I wear all the time. Well, eventually you'd find out, oh, that's why this guy wears not only pants, but they're always like brown and dark blue. They're always work pants. Well, you'd find out and it would make sense because you would know me and how I'm navigating the world. If I led with it, it would be bizarre. It would be so stupid. It'd be like, what's wrong with him? And if it's the really good stuff about you, you don't go on a date and at the first date and open by like pushing your resume across the table.
Right, here are my favorite colors. This is my favorite song. This is my lucky number.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't brag about the good things. You don't trauma dump about the bad things. It doesn't work that way, right? When you meet people. And if that stuff does come up, it's a severe turnoff almost all the time.
Well, and also when you're having a conversation, lots of times with someone new or maybe someone you haven't seen in a while, a lot of what you're doing is trying to find the thing that you relate upon. So, right. Yeah. So it really also always comes back to relatability. So you're digging through the muck to find out, oh, we both really like MMA. And now I can talk about Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev. And now we're off and running. Now we have a thing where we can meet together and spend the next 10 minutes, bouncing ideas off each other. That's how it works.
Yeah. This is baseball and more specifically the Mets for me and some of my college friends, because they were all Mets fans. They were all from New York or New Jersey. And that's the touch point. And then, yes, 20 minutes later, we're talking about serious things in our lives, our careers and family and whatever. But you don't lead with like, my life blows because here's the tragedy. You kind of don't. It's jarring that way. And it's weird, that is projecting something without caring about how it's received. It's a burden on people. That's why they don't like the trauma dump, because nobody really works up to the trauma dump. They just open the floodgates of sewage, and the person on the receiving end is not prepared to deal with that. So it's really uncomfortable. The story elements are very similar to in real life social elements in terms of what works with friendships, with romantic relationships, all of this. I think that's an element to a reason why some of these stories are getting worse, because the lives of the people making them are not very complete or good. And that's a super rude indictment to say, like, actually just your life is lame. you don't have normal experiences with friendships and neighborhoods and hobbies and boyfriends and girlfriends and whatever the hell. But it's another extreme situation where people who have wild experiences with any of those things tell great stories. They're so offbeat that the stories are unique. And the people who have really deep, broad experience with those things know how to tell great stories. When you're in between, you stink. You absolutely stink. You have nothing to reference. You have nothing realistic to create. You don't even know the realism so that you can create something that flies in the face of the realism. Oh, I'm going to do a fish out of water story. Okay, well, first you need to know both fish and water. Like,
right.
It's such a boring element, but that's actually step one. I'm not going to speak for you, but I've had enough conversations with people in all things culture and entertainment over the last 25 years to paint with a very broad brush about what they know about the world. It is overwhelmingly a very narrow slice, and they often think they know a tremendous amount.
Right.
So much of it is just wrong. It's very frustrating, and it's a major, major reason why I don't fit terribly well with, we were talking last night about different jobs and stuff like that. And it's like, where do you go to work when, so that you're not surrounded by people who think they have a deep understanding of states that they happily refer to as flyover states. Like, oh, that's all cornfields and incest. Like, okay, congratulations, but more goes on in Nebraska than that. Like, yes, there's corn, and I'm sure there is some percentage of incest like there is everywhere. But Nebraska is a big place with a very diverse set of people and economies and this and that. Well, you want to be around that every day if you have an appreciation. It's frustrating. It's why I don't watch much. I like slop at this point, like a Jason Statham slop. I'll watch that and be happy. I will watch a formulaic British crime show. I love them. I love the like crummy murder mystery type shows. I'm really entertained by them. But every time I try to watch something that's meant to be modern and good, most of the time I'm really disappointed at how flat it truly is. Filled with hate. How do you start with this offbeat game show story that, well, it's not a happy story. It's morbidly funny. Good comedic story. And now I'm filled with hate and loathing.
I know. I warned you that it was out of right field, that story. It's fresh in my mind.
Well, and I like right field.
You like Kirby Puckett.
a lot of
Juan
good
Gonzalez.
men in right field.
Jay Buhner.
Yeah. Jay Buhner. That's such a deep cut.
Well,
oh my God.
Yeah.
Old Jay Buhner out of the ether.
As a, dyed in the wool Ken Griffey Jr. obsessed child, I had to know Jay Buhner,
Yeah.
Bat and cleanup. Was he cleanup or was Edgar Martinez cleanup? I think Edgar Martinez was cleanup and then Buhner was fifth in the lineup, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I didn't watch West Coast ball.
Oh, it was rough as a child on the East Coast when the game starts at 10:30 or whatever. Horrible.
Yeah, I discovered that too with football when I first lived in LA. It never occurred to me that, like, oh my God, the 1:00 games in the East start at 10 a.m. on a Sunday.
Yeah, so you're going to the bar and getting beers at 10 a.m. I lived that when I was on the West Coast.
Yeah, I wasn't doing that then, but it was more like waking up, because you can't be out too late Saturday night and still wake up like fresh at 9 a.m.
No. I would.
Yeah, it never occurred to me.
I would work until 4:00 in the morning because I worked at a club. So I would be literally working until 4 a.m. sleep for a few hours, get up, walk down to a bar, because that was the only way to watch the game. I couldn't watch the game otherwise. So you'd have to go to a sports bar that had all the games on. And then, you're sitting there, you have a cup of coffee. And then, by the time the first quarter's over, you're like, well, I'm sitting at a bar. I guess I'll get a beer.
What are you going to do?
It's 11 a.m.
Yeah. I liked, I liked working early when I was in Wales. And I always went to pubs for the Wi-Fi because I didn't live in a place I wanted to sit in and do work. So I'd go to the pubs, and one day I had to really be there early to send something. I don't know why, but it was like 7 when it opened or something like that. And there was a line of like a dozen old men waiting to get in. I'm like, oh, this is just like at home where guys go to the convenience store, the gas station, and like drink coffee before work. They open the doors. Those dudes go to the bar and they got beer and they sat down and just talked. And I was like, you're standing in line for beer at 7 a.m.
Oh, gosh.
What is this culture?
Alcoholism.
I'm in the booth with Wi-Fi ordering a Diet Coke.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to say, Jen pointed out, I can't believe we didn't think of this, but she never understood icebreaker activities. That's absolutely designed to fail. Tell us your name and something interesting about yourself. It's also a weird competition too, right? Like you can't say something like worse than the person before you,
I watch
right?
TV all day. Like, that's not exciting.
Yeah. They're just designed to move mouths, and I guess it works for that. But are you really going to get anything that matters about any of those people? The one time I have one memory of an icebreaker working, and it was a guy, this was again in LA, it was a political group in Hollywood, and almost everybody worked in the industry in this thing. And this guy said he had either 5 or 6 kids. And he was like 28. He was a lot younger than me. And I forget his job, but he was, he did sound or something for somebody, whatever. And I remember thinking, that's really interesting. You don't meet people in California who are 28, who are happily married with 6 kids and do the family thing. This is really uncommon in this industry. That was sufficiently and truly interesting. Every other icebreaker has been stupid.
Yeah. Not everybody has 6 kids by the age of 28. That's a tough one to top.
Yeah. And he's a normal dude too. It wasn't like a weird, like, who's the famous athlete right now with like 1,000 kids?
Which one? I mean, Phillip Rivers has a lot of kids.
Does he really?
Tyreek Hill has a lot of kids.
That's who I'm thinking of, is Tyreek Hill, who had like 3 in the same year.
Yeah, it might have been 5. I mean, it was a lot. He had a lot in the same year. Yeah, which is, it's something.
This wasn't one of those questionable things. It's just like, me and my wife wanted a lot of kids, so we started making kids.
Yeah,
like, damn.
That's the Phillip Rivers situation.
Yeah, it makes sense.
He's got a lot of kids, but yeah, he's married. It's with the same woman. All right, that's it. That's the identity paradox. Let me know. Leave some comments what you think about my new idea here. And we're out of here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a patron. To those of you who are patrons, consider joining and supporting the podcast by going to patreon.com/thecreateunknown to keep this thing going. We'll be back next week. Until then, see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week. And the recent support has been amazing. Sidpoke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and the Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. And thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Ferry Kun, Jen Mafasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Piddler, Ryan Steer, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Videover. And a tremendous shout-out to our elite baby gang commanders. Atrocious Scuff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight Vintos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, and of course, Trev Stead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer, editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it, and thanks to Main Gear for powering all our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.